Welcome to the Creative Writing Career Podcast, where you learn how to make writing more than a hobby, make it a career. And here are your hosts, Stefan Bugaj, Justin Sloan, and Kevin Tumlinson.
Hello, everybody. This is Justin Sloan, and we're at the Creative Writing Career Podcast. And I'm here with my co-hosts, Stefan Bugaj and Kevin Tumlinson, who's on an insane delay today. Hopefully that won't last. And today we have, I might mess up your last name. I should have asked how to pronounce it first, Linda, but we have Linda Poitevin.
Close enough. It's Poitevin, but it's French, and everybody says Poitevin, and I answer to it. So
there's no way I'd be able to do a French pronunciation. Yeah, I took French for a semester at grad school, and my teacher kept making fun of me because I pronounced everything like Japanese. So at least I didn't go with a Japanese pronunciation this time. So cool. Yeah. So Linda, I first heard about Linda through the Rocking Self-Publishing podcast, which is another one of those great podcasts out there that everybody should probably be listening to. What interested me about Linda is that she has a large following on Wattpad. She can correct me when she jumps on, but it's around 35,000 followers, I believe. And one of her books has like 4 million reads, which just blows my mind. Like, what a great way to get some followers. And I know it doesn't work for everybody. So I'm hoping Linda can give us some pointers about how she got involved and what kind of books do well on there. And of course, her other publishing as well. She has some books published through Penguin USA, and I look forward to hearing and sharing more about those. But yeah, Linda, do you want to kind of give us a quick, fill in the blanks rundown of who you are?
Okay, fill in the blanks. What's the blanks? Okay, I am a dark urban fantasy and contemporary romance writer. I live in Ottawa, Canada. I think the very first published book was one of the romances that I have since self-published. Came out with a small press, and then shortly after that, I sold 2 of my books to Penguin USA, and that's the Grigori Legacy. It's a 4-book series. Penguin published 2 of the books in print and digital. They took the 3rd book in digital, and at that point, I kind of saw the writing on the wall contract-wise for the 4th book. So I decided that I would do a little bit of an experiment. I had heard about Wattpad, and I'd heard wonderful things from other writers. I jumped on it a couple of times in the past and honestly hadn't been that impressed, but I figured, you know what the heck? I have, at this point, nothing to lose. So I started releasing the first romance on Wattpad, and I started blogging about it. And I think that was a great deal of fun. I called it my Great Wattpad Experiment. Mm-hmm. And I let Wattpad know that I was doing this, and they offered to feature the book. And honestly, Wattpad and I were still scratching our head over how quickly things grew. They can't quite figure out what I did. I think that it was kind of just a creation of that perfect storm. Romance genre is really hot on Wattpad. No pun intended. The book had been edited to within an inch of its life. It had been through many editing processes, and so it was really, really well polished. And I think having it, I did drive my traffic from Twitter and Facebook. I was posting links and reminding people that this was a free read. So I think that I don't know quite what I did, mm-hmm. but it worked, and the story caught on. People loved it, started recommending it to their own followers and friends, and it did so well that I decided that I would write a second book. It was a spin-off novel that I'd kind of had in mind for the book for ages. And I ended up self-publishing that one as well. And it's done super well as well.
That's great. And those are both like pure romance, or are they kind of like a romance / subcategory of something else?
The first one, Gwyneth Ever After, I would call more of a romantic comedy.
Okay.
The second one has some suspense elements to it, although it definitely has its lighter moments. Both featured children, and I write kids really funny, so I think that's where my lighter moments come from.
And is that like as a protagonist, or just like one of the main characters that's in the book?
The children?
Yeah.
are very much supporting characters,
Okay.
but they tend to steal the show periodically.
Yeah, I was going to say, how does a children romance work?
They get in the way a lot.
Yeah, I'm glad you're not writing that. That'd be weird. We'd have to stop now.
You should stop.
Just joking. No,
I was just jotting down that I want to start writing children romances. So I'm glad you said something.
No.
Please do not, Kevin. Especially as a guy, it's even weirder. I feel like, I don't know. I could be off on that. That's sexism. I'm sorry. But no, that's really awesome. I can't believe like it just took off like that. And that's the exciting stories about, like, hopefully our podcast will just take off like that, and you'll see it in a few days. Wondering how it got there. But
we need the podcast on Wattpad is basically the answer.
Yeah. So it sounds like you don't really, like you said, know like how it got success, except for maybe the fact that romance does so well. And at what point did you jump on there? Do you think it had to do with timing, about maybe when Wattpad was starting to take off or anything like that?
I put the first book out. It would have just been just over a year ago. It was April of 2014. So
okay.
I honestly, I put a lot of effort into the process. Mm-hmm. I kept a very, very rigid schedule as far as when I was posting, and that makes a difference. If you're going to be on Wattpad, you can't just throw a whole story up on Wattpad, sit back and wait for the readers to find you, because that is not going to happen. I was posting 1 or 2 chapters a week. It was Friday mornings at 8:00. And if I was, 15 minutes late, I would have, my inbox on my email would be filled with messages going, I'm here, where are you?
Oh, man.
So readers do have expectations, and you want to make sure that you are fulfilling those expectations. The story itself, every single chapter ended on some kind of a hook. And I know that we know this as writers, but when you are posting something as a serial, the way Wattpad, I was doing on Wattpad, that hook really needs to be there so that your readers can't wait for the next week, and they're there before you will have had your copy on Friday morning. So that was really important. Like I said, driving traffic from my other social media platforms was also a critical key point for me.
Yeah.
I have, I think, 15,000 followers on Twitter. So when I started posting links, I know that I drove a portion of my Twitter followers as traffic over to Wattpad, just out of curiosity. And a lot of them stuck around.
That's great. And you had, like you said, I think you mentioned you published the other books before you went over to Wattpad, and that's where those followers came from?
Yeah. Twitter, I don't use Twitter much as a marketing platform. I don't use any of my social media strictly for marketing. Mm-hmm. For me, social media, all of my platforms are about building community. And that was what I did with Wattpad. It was what I did with Twitter. These are people that, something in their profile has caught my attention. They've followed me for one reason or another. I've struck up conversations with a great many of them, however briefly. Answering it, it's really important on Wattpad, Twitter, Facebook. It doesn't matter what the platform is. If somebody starts talking to you on that platform, you have to answer. So when you get a comment on Wattpad on a chapter, something somebody likes, something, they're looking forward to, curious, you need to be willing to answer, because this is a dialogue, and it is community rather than a soapbox.
Yeah, and I think you're an expert in that for sure. And so when somebody does a comment like that, you just reply, you can't just reply, thank you, can you? Is there something more to it?
It depends. There are a handful of comments that I don't actually have a reply to. I mean, they'll be replying or commenting to something that somebody else has said. So I don't reply to absolutely every single one. But I mean, a thank you, if it's, if they're really enjoying the story and they're excited, I do. I say thank you. I thank you for taking the time to let me know. I'm so excited that you're excited. I'm thrilled that you're enjoying the story. Those are all, it's just feedback. They know that you're taking the time to read their comments.
Mm-hmm. So, Linda, I'm curious about how you transitioned people from Twitter to Wattpad. Like what you said you don't like to use it for marketing or whatever. I mean, you don't like to just do a sales pitch. So how did you get everyone over? Like, give me a typical post, I guess.
Okay. We're writers, and as writers, we need to think creatively when we're doing our posts, and we need to take our story writing abilities and hone them to 140 characters or less. So my posts would give a little bit of a quote, or it would be a tagline, or it would be, I'm just trying to think. I worked around holidays, for weekends, looking for a little romance this weekend. Check out free read at Wattpad.
Right.
So, just not just say, I have a free story, here's the link.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But getting them curious, asking a question that, a lot of people are going to say yes to. I mean, who doesn't want a little romance in their life?
Right. Yeah. I think you do have a slight advantage in that you are pushing romance rather than, say, science fiction. But I think the same sort of idea could apply. I mean, looking for some adventure or looking for that idea. Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm currently posting chapters up on the fourth and final book in my Grigori Legacy series. It's called Sins of the Warrior. It has come out in both print and ebook, and I am in the process of putting up a couple of chapters every week on Wattpad. The book is slated to be featured starting December 2nd, I think. And I'm curious because I've done so well in the romance. I'm curious to see what will happen with, in this case, it is very dark urban fantasy. It's the war between heaven and hell. Armageddon actually happens. So I'm curious to see what kind of a following I can bring to the book on Wattpad. I've driven very little of my current Wattpad traffic over to that book so far. It's just not resonating with them. So in this instance, I'm kind of having to build the audience from scratch.
Yeah. So do you build CTAs into your posts? I mean, how are you directing people to the books?
Okay. For actual sales, you mean?
Right. I mean, so you do a serial post. Is there like a CTA or a bio or something at the bottom of it that you?
There is. You can't actually embed a link, a live link in Wattpad at the end of a chapter. I so wish that you could, but that's not a feature. So what I do is I will end the chapter with just a little note from me to the readers. It's, I hope you're enjoying this, or stay warm this weekend if you're getting the same kind of weather that we are, something of that nature. And then just don't forget, if you can't wait to read the next chapter, the completed ebook is available on Kindle, Kobo, Nook, and iBook. Buy links are on my website at lindapoitevin.com. And I find that driving traffic to that one link is because all the buy links are there, and I'm not having to provide a series of them.
Right. That's smart.
Yeah.
It is too bad that they don't let you do the hyperlink, though. That would be easier.
You can put one link in on each chapter. There is a way to do it. It's kind of hidden. Have you discovered it?
No.
Okay.
I think I've seen it, but I think I used it to just blanket drive everyone back to my homepage. So I never thought about using it as part of the CTA.
Yeah, you can put in your Amazon link, you can put in your iTunes link, whatever, and you can vary it. And I have not played with this enough yet. I will probably play with it more in the future. And I'm just clicking around right now. It's if you are creating a new part to your story. Nope, that's not it.
While you're doing that too, I was I think I listened to your Rocking Self-Publishing podcast episode, and you talked about like how to get featured, and I followed that advice, and it didn't work. What they did is they redirected me like 3 times, and so now there's like some form that you fill out, and it goes to some support team, and then they got lost in the weeds. So either they decided they didn't like my book or books, because I'm doing a couple of them, trying it out. Similar genre to your Grigori Legacy, actually. And pretty exciting to. I've been reading a little bit of yours and loving it, since it's similar but different. Yours has more of a little more of an adult feel to it, I guess, than mine. Mine's more like middle grade, and yours is more like young adult, I guess I would say, right?
Mine is definitely not young adult. No,
it's more adult.
No. Yeah, very, very.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we have a homicide detective tracking serial killers, dealing with warrior angels, the war between heaven and hell.
Right.
There's the language and level of description in the some of the scenes, definitely not young adult.
Although I feel like nowadays that's iffy.
Yeah,
but
absolutely. But it's not something I'm not going to market the book to
you
young
don't see
adult.
it as young adult, so that's what matters. Yeah, and the age of the protagonists in that one are what again?
Give me a second. She is 32.
Oh, okay.
I think. And the angels, of course, are immortal, so they don't really have ages.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was looking at getting one of those featured, because it's a trilogy, and I have the second 2 out now, and I've started posting the first one. So, do you have any thoughts on how to get it featured? Do you have like a direct connection now that you work with, and you don't have to deal with like the typical style, or?
I do have contacts at Wattpad. Okay. Yes, but when I initially started, I think that they are having to become more selective, because more and more people are finding out about this.
Yeah, you gave away the secret.
I did, but other authors are giving away the secret too. So it's not that much of a secret anymore. But there are a tremendous number of writers out there who are wanting to launch careers via Wattpad. So they will be inundated with requests, no doubt, which is why they're having to try and streamline their process a bit.
Yeah. Interesting.
So I guess my best advice would be just make sure that you are polished to the nth degree. And one of the ways that my books have stood out on Wattpad is because they have been professionally edited. Mm-hmm. I don't put things up on Wattpad that are in their early draft stage. The second romance I put up, Forever Grace, did go up in its beta format. I put a disclaimer on it at the beginning of the story, just letting people know that, yes, there were going to be some typos and grammatical errors, and yes, they would be corrected. Yeah. And then I went back and I had the book edited, and that's what went up on Wattpad then. So one of the ways to stand out, and I know that this makes me stand out, because I've lost count of the number of readers who have said, it's so nice to find a book on Wattpad that is edited, that is, the spelling is correct and it's grammatically correct. So definitely worth going through a bit of an editorial process if you are looking to be featured.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Hey, do you mind if I jump in and change the topic away from platforms for a second and just ask you about romance writing, which is a genre that has a lot of rules and a lot of pitfalls. And for our listeners who might be interested in that genre, if you have any advice for new romance writers about do's and don'ts that you learned from your experience that they might benefit from hearing.
If you are going to be writing with a particular house in mind, for instance, Harlequin, then you're going to want to be very, very close attention to their submission guidelines. They have topics that they want to see. They have topics they don't want to see. They're very market driven. In my case, Gwyneth Ever After was the first romance, and I did shop it around to the publishers, and I met with zero success with them. And yet the book has found a readership now that I've self-published. So self-publishing kind of changes the rules. They're becoming more blurred. When it comes to romance, the only real hard and fast rule is that it has to have a happy ending. because that is just integral to the romance. You can have a love story that doesn't have a happy ending, but you can't call it a romance. If you're going to call it a romance, you must have the happy ever after.
Interesting. I hadn't actually considered that distinction. That's cool.
Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with Sean and Johnny at the Self Publishing Podcast, but they published a romance and they didn't have a happy ending on it, and so it got torn apart in the review process. So it's kind of a fun story about how that actually plays into real life.
It's really important. Reader expectations they are very, very real, and you want to make sure that you're not pitching something that is going to lead them astray, because if they pay money and you don't deliver what they're expecting, you will hear about it.
And yeah, I'd love to hear more about the publishing process too, the traditional publishing, because I'm sure we have listeners who are interested in self-publishing and traditional publishing, kind of like what that was like for you. Is it, they kind of say nowadays that publishers don't do as much marketing as we would like. So what's the advantages, disadvantages, and all that of going traditional versus self?
There are pros and cons to all of the avenues of publishing. Traditional covers both the big publishers and the smaller press. If you're going with the big five in New York, what you get is the exposure in bookstores that you're not really going to get through any other avenue, because very few of the small presses have the same distribution level that the big five have. That said, your book has approximately 2 weeks on the shelf to sell, and if it doesn't, they start sending it back. Mm-hmm. So you have a very narrow window of opportunity. You're either going to catch on or you're not, and it has to be done in very short order. The big publishers are not putting as much money behind their beginning authors as they once did. That is true. The advantages are you are going to have that professional editing team behind you. Your story will go through 3 layers of editing. You will do your substantive with your main editor. Then it goes to copy edit. You get a whole style sheet from them, and they're asking questions that you considered, and then it goes to proofread, and your cover design costs are all taken care of. So the advantage to traditional publishing would be editing and process at no cost to you, and the distribution, because that you get that wide exposure. And they are doing some of the marketing and promotion in those early days with the first book. They're sending out to reviewers. They're getting you some of those contacts that are really tough to get if you are published. So, but after that, the support is dramatic. So if the first book doesn't take off, then that supports to disappear.
So how much marketing are you doing personally? Like, how are you taking care of that?
Okay. The mistake that I made when I published the first book with Penguin, the first 2 books, is I threw myself heart and soul into the marketing and promotion process. And I went on blog tours, and I contacted newspapers. I sent out press releases. I spent hours on the internet scouring for new ideas and ways to market. I bought swag and I held contests. And what I really should have been doing is writing the next book, because there's nothing that is going to advance your career as a writer faster than the next book. You cannot focus on that 1 or 2 books and trying to find your readership, because it's just not going to happen.
So even with traditional publishing, you're saying that's the case?
That's totally the case.
Wow.
Unless you are one of those outliers like J.K. Rowling, and know how few and far between they are. They are, pretty much literally 1 in a million. So you are going to have to be a professional. You are going to have to write, and you're going to have to keep writing. And eventually, the idea is you're going to there in the ninth book on the stories that people start to look at your backlist. And that's when you hit a bit of a tipping point where people are starting to know you, know your writing. Is that terribly discouraging?
No, that's actually incredibly encouraging, because one of the biggest challenges, one of the biggest challenges for for me as an author, and for any authors I've ever really worked with or spoken to, it's always the marketing. And writing the books that's what we want to do anyway. So it's very encouraging to hear someone say, hey, that's your best marketing tool, is to just write the next book.
It is, however. I'm going to throw something here.
No, don't throw water on it now.
Sorry, I'm about to put a damper on this. I am a huge social media advocate, and that is about building that community I was talking about, because you're not going to be in the bookstores if you're out through the big five, you'll be there for a very, very short time. If you are small press or self-published, you may not ever be in the bookstores. You still need the discoverability. So you're still going to have to work at that. And social media can be an amazing way of doing that just via building that community. I'm very active on Twitter, on Facebook, and of course on Wattpad. And I am interacting with my followers on a more personal level. We have conversations. I post a lot of, cats rule the internet. My fluffy cat rules the internet. So I post funny pictures of her, just little tidbits from my day that might resonate with other people. And the key here is that you are building a relationship. It's almost a friendship status. People want to get to know the writer behind the stories. The bonus is when I then have something that is worth announcing, like a new book or something big happens, my community, they're personally invested in me, and they are so excited for me that they willingly share my news.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic. That's the kind of marketing that it's free. It's painless. You get to know, I have so many people on Facebook, on Twitter. We pop into and out of each other's conversations, and I've gotten to know people all over the world. And I can remember about a year ago, there was a woman, she was following me on Facebook, and we'd had conversations. She was I do some gardening, and she loved all my Facebook posts about gardening. And about 3 months after she started following me, she pops up one day and she said, I had no idea you were a writer. I'm going to go look up your books. But that just illustrates that, they're not all following me because I'm a writer. They're following me for a variety of reasons. But when they see a new book come out, they get curious. They go look it up. If it's not their taste, they may say, oh, well, I don't read dark urban fantasy, but my mother-in-law loves it. So I got your book for her.
Right.
So
That's fantastic.
You still want to be out there building that relationship. I honestly, and this is from the bottom of my heart, I don't think that a writer in today's publishing world is going to get very far without being on social media and actively working at it.
Yeah, I think I agree with that.
Yeah. And for you listener who wants to get out there, feel free to, tag us and we'll retweet your stuff. Mention that you heard about us on the podcast, and you promote us, we'll promote you. That's our plug. That's my plug for us.
That works.
Awesome.
But don't just be retweeting other people's stuff either, because if I have a new follower on Twitter, I will go and I will look at their Twitter stream, and if all they've ever done is retweet other people's stuff, I will not follow back.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get to know the person, not just the retweets.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of gets old. I think we're coming up to the end of our time. We definitely want to see if there's anything else you want to, plug, or if you want to share any websites where people can find you or your work.
Okay, well, me and my work can be found on www.lindapoitevin, that's LindaPoitevin.com. If that's too much, you can look up the Gregorian Legacy and you'll find me that way. Sins of the Angels, Sins of the Sun, Sins of the Lost, Sins of the Warrior. A lot of sinning going on in my life for a while. And then there's the romance series, Gwyneth Ever After and Forever Grace. And currently working on a new novella for that will be released on Wattpad as well. So yeah, come find me on Wattpad too, and you can check out my stuff.
Great. We look forward to reading more about it and hearing how your journey goes. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you very much for asking. This was fun.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Too bad it's only half an hour. I'd love to keep hearing your stories, and I'm sure we'll have you back on someday.
I would love that. And I hope that I've at least answered some of your questions.
Oh, very useful. Thank you. And
thank you.
Yeah. Okay, for you listener, thank you again for joining us. And this has been the Creative Writing Career Podcast.
Thanks so much for listening to the Creative Writing Career Podcast with your hosts, Stefan Bugai, Justin Sloan, and Kevin Thomas.